Nobody heard the sound of the acid falling into the water, but everyone felt the silence that came afterward. It was an ordinary summer afternoon, one of those where the heat seems to stick to your skin, and yet something was wrong. The gate to the community pool was still open. The sun reflected off the blue water, but the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. As if that pool knew it was about to become the center of something the city would never forget. The Black family arrived smiling, low laughter, flip-flops slapping against the hot ground, black children running ahead with that innocent joy only those who still believe in the world can have. But after the Black family arrived, everyone's looks began to change. Some bodies stiffened. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, and it was there in that almost invisible second that something cruel began to take shape. Without words, without signs, without warnings, just intention. They didn't know. No one said anything. The water looked clean, calm, inviting, but there was something hidden there, something not visible to the naked eye, something that didn't just burn the skin, but dignity. As the children approached the edge, time seemed to slow down. A father felt a strange tightness in his chest. A mother hesitated for a second, then ignored it. After all, it was just a pool, just another day. What that Black family could never have imagined is that someone had decided that space wasn't for them, not with words, not with racist signs, but with a silent, cowardly, calculated gesture. A gesture that would turn fun into fear, leisure into trauma, and a simple pool into a symbol of racial hatred. The kind of hatred that grows when no one is looking. And the most disturbing part wasn't what happened that day. It was what happened the next day, when other children, this time white, entered the same water. When the entire city woke up to a truth impossible to ignore. And when many began to whisper the same word, afraid to say it out loud. Karma. But before any screams, before any sirens, before anyone understood what was really happening, there was a silent choice, and it had already condemned people who had no idea of the cruelty about to unfold. Marcus always believed that protecting his family meant working more, talking less, and swallowing a lot. He woke up every day before sunrise, crossed the still dark city, and returned home with a tired body and a heavy mind. Not because he wanted to, but because as a Black man in the United States, he knew rest had always been a selective privilege. Still, that day, he promised his children something simple, a bit of normalcy. The mother, Aisha, packed the backpacks with exaggerated care. Sunscreen, towels, snacks cut into equal pieces, as if organization could shield the family from the world outside. She smiled, but inside she carried that ancient, inherited, unspoken fear. The fear of being in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong color. Even so, she took a deep breath. "It's just a pool," she repeated to herself. The children didn't know that weight. For them, it was just water, sun, and laughter. They didn't understand why some adults looked away. They didn't notice the microaggressions disguised as silence. They didn't know that in many places, Black children still needed invisible permission to simply exist. They just wanted to swim. And that in itself already seemed like too much for some people. The community pool sat in the heart of the neighborhood, a public space, theoretically equal for everyone. But Marcus had learned over the years that equality in the United States often ends at the sign, not in practice. He felt the stares. He felt the air change. He felt that familiar sensation of being watched like an intruder, even though he paid taxes, followed rules, even though he was just there. And as the family approached the water, unaware that each step was taking them deeper into something irreversible, someone somewhere watched in silence, without hurry, without apparent guilt. Because for certain minds, that wasn't a crime. It was a message. At first, no one said anything directly. It was all in the details. A group of white residents standing up at the same time. A mother yanking her son's arm too hard. A man closing his umbrella, staring at Marcus for long, uncomfortable seconds. The pool, which minutes earlier had been full of voices, began to empty as if someone had pressed an invisible button. And still, no one explained why. Marcus noticed. He always noticed. That silence wasn't new. He had felt it at work when he was the last to be promoted. He had felt it at the supermarket when security followed him down the aisles. He had felt it during traffic stops with no clear reason. Stay calm, he thought. Don't give them a reason. Don't give them an excuse. He swallowed the anger. As he had learned to do since he was young, But something inside him began to crack. "They're leaving, Daddy," said the youngest son, with the innocence of someone who still doesn't understand the world. Marcus forced a smile. Must be their time. But Aisha didn't buy that answer. She felt her stomach tighten. She saw the whispers. She noticed the phones pointed discreetly. A woman passed by her and muttered, barely moving her lips, "Some people don't know how to respect spaces." The sentence hung in the air. No direct accusation, no name, but heavy enough to hurt. The atmosphere grew strange, dense. The black children entered the water slowly, laughing, splashing drops into the hot air, and that's when Marcus felt something he couldn't explain. It wasn't ordinary fear. It was a raw, instinctive premonition, as if the place felt wrong, as if something had been violated. He looked at the surface of the pool. Everything seemed normal. Blue water, sky reflection, nothing out of place. "You okay?" Aisha asked, noticing his silence. "I'm just tired," he replied. But it wasn't tiredness. It was survival. Minutes later, a condo employee appeared. He didn't speak to the family. He spoke to another resident, pointed at the pool, made a vague gesture with his hand. Marcus tried to listen, but only caught a fragment. "Better avoid trouble." Trouble. The word echoed in his head. Since when are my children trouble? And then came the first physical reaction. One child complained of a slight stinging in the eyes. Another rubbed their arm, uncomfortable. Nothing alarming. Nothing that would justify panic. Not yet. Marcus stood up immediately. His heart raced. Aisha felt the ground disappear for a second. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Meanwhile, on the other side of the pool, someone watched in silence. Arms crossed, face expressionless. No surprise. No hurry to help. And it was in that moment, before any explanation, before any sirens, before any adult took responsibility, that Marcus understood something cruel. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't an accident. And it definitely wasn't a coincidence. The first scream didn't come from an adult. It came from a child. It wasn't a loud scream. It was short, confused. The sound of someone who doesn't understand their own pain. Marcus turned his face instantly and saw his oldest son come out of the water with eyes squeezed shut, blinking rapidly, rubbing his face with wet hands. The skin burned. Not like fire. It burned like betrayal, like something that shouldn't have been there. "Get out of the water. Now." Marcus's voice came out too firm, too loud, startling even himself. Other children started complaining, stinging, discomfort, a strange sensation on the skin. Nothing bled. Nothing seemed serious at first glance, and that was exactly what made everything even crueler, because those watching from the outside could pretend it was exaggeration, that it was drama, that it was whining, like so many other times. Aisha entered silent panic. She pulled the children one by one, hugging them, smelling them, touching their arms, trying to understand what was happening. Her heart beat so hard it seemed to echo in her ears. "No, no, no," she repeated inside. "Not here. Not like this. Not with them." "It must be the chlorine," someone finally said, breaking the silence. "Sometimes it happens." Marcus looked toward the voice. It was the same man who minutes earlier had watched with arms crossed, the same one who showed no surprise, the same one who now spoke with rehearsed, almost irritating calm. Marcus felt the blood rise, felt humiliation mixed with rage, because he knew. Deep down, he had always known. "Chlorine doesn't do this," he replied, teeth clenched. That's when the smell changed. Light, almost imperceptible, an acidic metallic odor that didn't match sunscreen or summer. An employee finally approached the pool's edge, touched the water, brought his fingers to his nose. His face went pale. Everyone out of the water. Now. Time stopped. The pool was hurriedly emptied. The black children were pulled away as if suddenly they were the problem, not the water. A resident started yelling that this was an overreaction. Another filmed with their phone. No one offered to help. No one apologized. No one asked if the children were okay. Until someone said the word no one wanted to hear. Acid. Not in a tone of shock, but in a tone of confirmation. Aisha's legs gave out. Marcus caught his wife before she fell. The children cried without understanding. Not from the physical pain, which was still bearable, but from fear, from confusion, from the feeling of having been deliberately put in danger, sirens in the distance. They took too long, way too long. When the firefighters arrived and cordoned off the area, the story had already spread. But not as a crime, not as racism, not as an attack. It spread as an incident, as a mistake, as an unfortunate situation. Marcus heard those words and felt something die inside him, because he knew exactly what that meant. No one would be held accountable, at least not that day. "Are you sure the children were just playing?" a police officer asked. The question landed like an invisible punch. Marcus took a deep breath, breathed like someone fighting not to explode. "They're children," he replied. "They were swimming." The look he received in return wasn't empathy. It was doubt. The pool was closed, yellow tape, photos, reports, and then silence. The kind of silence that protects no one. The family left without an ambulance, without headlines, without a public apology, just with the feeling that they had survived something that should never have happened. That night Marcus didn't sleep. Neither did Aisha. The children woke up scared, complaining that their skin still stung a little, that their eyes bothered them. Nothing serious, nothing newsworthy, but enough to leave a mark. And that's when something changed. Because the next day the pool was reopened, quietly, without public notice, without a clear explanation. On the notice posted on the rusty entrance gate, there were only 3 cold lines. After internal analysis, no significant risk was identified. The pool has been treated and is safe for use. The management regrets the inconvenience. No signature, no report, no external inspection, no apology. The official justification spread through the neighborhood like a convenient whisper. It was just a chlorine dosing error. An employee overreacted. They created unnecessary panic. Everything's back to normal now. Normal. The word sounded almost offensive. The next morning, the gate was open again. Blue water once more. Children laughing. Parents relaxed. As if nothing had happened. As if no one had been targeted. As if pain had an expiration date. And then the white children entered the pool. This time no one ran out. No one gathered towels. No one closed umbrellas. The space was full, alive, noisy, confident. They jumped in hard, dove deep, stayed longer, played for more minutes than Marcus's family had the day before. And the effect was different, not immediate, not visible at first, but progressive, insidious. First came the strange silence, that kind of pause that doesn't belong to playtime. A girl came out of the water, rubbing her arms repeatedly. A boy stood still in the shallow end, blinking too much, too confused. Another started complaining that his throat scratched from the inside. The parents tried to downplay it. It must be psychological. They heard the story too much. They're just suggestible. But then one child began to cry for real, not drama, pain. There was no blood, no open wounds, but there was skin too red for sun, eyes too irritated for chlorine, breathing too short for anxiety. And this time, it couldn't be ignored. A boy fainted at the pool's edge, not for show, but from his body's exhaustion, reacting to something still present. Help came fast. This time it came fast. Ambulance, medical team, loud siren, scared neighbors, phones recording, the same pool, the same water. But now, different treatment. Tests confirmed. Chemical residue was still present. Not enough to cause immediately visible damage in short exposures, but enough to cause more serious reactions in those who stayed submerged longer. And then came the shock. The revelation no one could contain anymore. The substance used hadn't been a chlorine error. It hadn't been technical carelessness. It hadn't been an operational accident. Someone had put it there deliberately, not to cause death, but to cause expulsion, to cause fear, to send a silent message. The attack had a target, and the target wasn't the children now in hospitals. As the investigation progressed, they discovered something even more disturbing. The man who had watched in silence the day before, arms crossed, the same one who said, "It must be just chlorine," was a member of the condo board. He himself had pressured for the quick reopening of the pool. He himself had blocked external inspection. He himself had signed the internal report, not out of incompetence, but out of arrogance, because he thought it would never come back to his own. When the truth came out, the city stopped, not out of empathy, but out of fear, because in that moment, Everyone understood something too uncomfortable to ignore. The hatred that had been tolerated while it only hit the others had now crossed the line. And that's when the word started circulating again, this time out loud, this time without whispers, karma. Not as mystical revenge, but as the inevitable consequence when injustice is swept under the rug. Marcus watched it all from home. The television on, the condo's name plastered everywhere, images of the same pool, the same water, the same fences, now surrounded by reporters. Taisha didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction on her face, just deep sadness, because deep down she knew no child should have gone through that. Not hers, not the others, but the world only woke up. When the pain crossed the border of privilege, the responsible party was arrested, the condo was sued, the pool was closed indefinitely, and the city, which once preferred comfortable silence, was now forced to face what had always been there. The hatred hadn't been born that day. It had simply been revealed, and the pool stopped being just a pool. It became a symbol. It became evidence. It became memory, because some stories don't scare by what they show. They scare by what they reveal about who we are, and about how long we were able to pretend we didn't see. And now I ask you, do you think the city would have reacted the same way? If only the black children had been affected. If this video touched you, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that hurt and heal.